Welcome to PowerNation Builds. I'm Allie Walker. Today, MuscleCar transforms a base 69 Camaro into their own version of a special order COPO.
Well, I'm taking the Camaro for my first little ride, and it definitely feels like a muscle car. The steering on it is a little stiff. That's because it's non-power. The brakes on it, all drum, non-power also. So when you get in the brakes, you have to decide, you're going left, you're going right. Well, motor in it, this thing's got the 307, which isn't really nothing to look at much because it was Chevrolet's idea of performance with economy. And well, he really didn't hit neither one of them. See, let me show you. Did you notice I even just got on it then? Oh yeah. Oh, no, not at all. Oh geez. Private property. Better turn around. At least it still has the original stock bumpers, and they're in good shape so they can be re-chromed. And it's got a small amount of rust in the rear quarters, which can be repaired. And when you get in a car like this one, with this kind of age, well, you better expect that kind of stuff. All this stuff plays a factor whenever you're talking money on these. But at least with this car, it's got all the parts, and really, it's exactly what we need. So I think we're gonna go ahead and take this one.
Well, guys, as you saw, Tommy spent a lot of time and energy rolling around the country down here to find us a 69 for a COPO tribute car. He found us a jewel. It's in really good shape. It's a baseline car, which means nobody's going to be upset if we tear apart a Z28 or something like that. But let's see what we've got to get started and get rolling.
These bumperettes are going to go away in the long run because the typical COPO didn't include them. But that sure doesn't mean someone else can't use them. So a little bit of care can get you some cash back towards your next project. We are going to be reusing the chin spoiler since it's a part of the COPO look, but the fender trim is going to be a no-no.
Even though we're not going to use them, I'm going to give you guys a little tip about the stock hubcaps and trim rings. If you've noticed, you see a lot of the old GM rings on the Chevelles and Camaros that have small dents around them. That's because people leave them on the car when they go to take the hubcaps off and push against the edge of them. Take the outer trim ring off first so you're not laying on it, and keep it good looking.
The rocker trim gets to stay since it came on the COPOs, but like the front, the rear bumperettes are destined to wind up on someone else's car. Trip rail moldings can be a real pain to remove. Sometimes you can save them, but sometimes you can't. Now you guys may be wondering why we're draining some of the fluids. The reason being is once you pull this dry shaft and you go to pull all this stuff out, all that stuff is going to wind up on the floor. So just take a few extra minutes, save you some cleanup time.
Hold on. Okay. Okay.
Ah, yucky. Ah, yucky.
Let me guess, all the water that came in the back just went out the front.
It like runs downhill.
There's that mess we were talking about. Show them the pretty full hood. Whoa, where are we going? I've already busted off one of the spark plugs, but I'm not too worried about it because they're old plugs in an old motor that were taken out. But I like to leave them in the motor because you never know. It's going to sit in the garage, sit in the shed, sit outside. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to pull the header back, and I'm going to knock the porcelain off, which will make it easier for me to get the header out, lift the motor up out of the car. Even if you leave the broken plugs in the motor, it keeps it sealed up, keeps the weather out of it. And therefore, if you're lucky, it won't end up tied up.
Looks like I got the easy side. After I unbolted the header, it came up through the top. Next is to clear out the stuff on the top of the motor that ties it to the car. starting with the heater hoses, radiator hoses, and the cooling system. This little old 2-barrel is gonna go away too. And for no more real estate than this little thing takes up, it sure does have a ton of lines, vacuum hoses, and components latched onto it. Once everything is out of the way, we can bring in the hoist and get to jacking.
Go ahead, back up a little more.
Coming up, MuscleCar has a fever, and the only prescription is more horsepower. We're back with a COPO appropriate 427 and 4-speed.
With the floor modifications that have to be done, we want to get the seats out of the way so we can work unhindered. The carpet's got to go too, and we're planning to order some brand new that we can install back in there a little later on.
Come on down, Tom. I'm on the pinch weld on the firewall. Take her up just a tad. There we go. Okay, time out. My concern is this HEI distributor. I'd hate to damage any of it.
We're gonna have to lose that wiper motor for right now, or drop a valve cover off because it's touching.
Push down on the nose and push in. Kind of like that. Nowadays, modern transmissions have the linkage and the adjustment for it inside the case. But old school transmissions like Muncie's had them mounted on the outside in conjunction with the shifter. When it comes to muscle cars, there are a few things that are more iconic than the white 4-speed shifter knob. Just take a look at our logo. And one of the biggest icons in the business is still around making some of the best shifters today. This Hurst 4-speed shifter that we got from Classic Industries comes with fully adjustable gear stops, which limit the throw on the shifter itself, therefore eliminating the potential for damage inside the transmission. The linkage kit, also from Classic Industries, is a direct bolt-on from the shifter to the transmission, making our job very easy.
With the bottom half of the shifter installed, we'll use it as a guide for where to place the hole. Then we'll pull it off to keep it safe, and with the hole saw, we'll make the initial cut. After the shifter gets reinstalled with the top half on it, the linkage can be hooked up as well. Then the retainer can be removed so that it will shift. Now we can keep shifting the tranny and cut out the metal that prevents it from moving all the way through the gears. Once we're satisfied that it moves like it should, we'll call it good.
Everything's working.
Well, our Camaro's at a point we can load up the gun, spray on some color. Been waiting for this. The paint has a longer pot life than the primer, which is 2 hours at 70 degrees. You can spray it over primed aluminum, steel, and fiberglass. And it's non-metallic, which means if you're new to the painting game, this might be a good option for you. Plus, there are few things that look meaner than a jet black muscle car. The color we sprayed on is a single stage paint, which means you could spray it on and call it good. But we're wanting to do a little bit of buffing later on, so we're going to go ahead and spray on some clear. Being able to come back and buff out the finish of a car is one of those things that really takes a job up to the next level. And a few good coats of clear will give us ample material to do so. When you apply this clear over the top of single stage paint, it needs to happen within 24 hours of when the paint is applied. Or you can come back and scuff the color with a gray scuff pad before clearing it. Use 50 to 60 PSI with a conventional gun, spraying at 8 to 10 inches. You will also want to allow 2 to 5 minutes between coats. I've still got a good deal of buffing to do, and in the end, it'll be time well spent. I also think that we made a good color choice for this car.
Now the jury is still out on whether or not they actually made any black ZL1 COPOs. But from what we can tell, if they didn't, they sure should have.
Coming up, more PowerNation builds. Welcome back to PowerNation builds. We're about to dial in the timing on the COPO Camaro.
We'll pick it up with the rear panels because they have to go in before the seats. Then we're ready to start with the rear seats, of which the back goes in first, held in place by these little tabs on the outer edge of the frame. Then the bottom can go in and we can move on to the front. Each of the front seats are held in by 4 bolts, and it's just that simple. We're ready to move on to the exhaust on our COPO. So we broke out the exhaust pipes and we're gonna go with a full stainless kit that we got from MagnaFlow. The system is easy to install with mandrel bent tubes that are specifically designed for 67 to 72 Camaros and Firebirds.
There you go. There we go.
And once it's in, that stainless steel construction looks great under your car. And since we're running headers, we'll start at the rear and work our way forward. That's because we don't know how long the front pipes need to be, and assembling the back first will help us determine that. Putting the dry shaft in now will help ensure that we don't have any fitment issues once everything's hard mounted. Then the X-pipe goes in. Now we'll work on getting everything adjusted and symmetrical. All of this exhaust tube needs at least a ½ inch of clearance between it and anything around it.
Okay guys, now that Tommy's got the engine primed, there's a couple things we need to touch on before we put the distributor back in the motor. The oil pump is driven by the gear on the bottom of the distributor. Well, when Tommy removed this gear, in order to keep from turning the camshaft, we had to mate this end of the tool up, which is identical to the end of the distributor we have here. It will only go in one of 2 ways, either straight in or 180 degrees out. Now, when putting the distributor back in the motor, there's a certain area that most guys want number 1 to be, first for them to remember positioning and also to get the firing order correct. So what we'll do is drop it in the back to see if it will go, in fact, all the way in where we'd like it to be. If it doesn't, which it doesn't seem like it's going to do by turning the gear, we'll pull it back out, and we can use Tommy's tool to turn just the pump and put the blade for the distributor in the position we want it to be in to get the rotor to face where we want it to be on the motor for cylinder number 1. We've made a slash on the top of the distributor shaft to show us which way the blade is pointing now inside the motor. We've got it turned to where we want it to be, approximately in the area where number 1 is on this distributor. Now we'll pull it back out. Reinsert the distributor and turn the rotor. Not bad. On initial startup, we like to use water instead of antifreeze just in case there's a leak. And it just so happens we found one on a pipe plug on the passenger side of the engine. Just a dab of Loctite, thread sealant, and this will fix it up.
Well, here we are. We're fixing to start the Camaro for the first time, and hopefully we don't have any noises that we're gonna have to fix. I'm gonna do a very important role, sit here in the interior and be comfortable, but I'm gonna be checking on the gauges to make sure if things head south, I'll know it before it gets bad. And Mankford, he's gonna do some tuning out there. Now this is when you bring the motor up to temperature to begin the break-in process. We'll be doing some initial engine tuning while we're at it, but you wanna move pretty quickly to get it all set. You can start by tuning it by ear. Then you also adjust the idle screw to bring the engine up to a good RPM range for what we're doing right now.
How much oil pressure we got, Tom? We good?
Yeah, we got probably 60 pounds.
That's good. Now the real timing can begin. We'll bust out the timing light, and it looks like we're running pretty high, 34 degrees. This big block likes to sit down around the neighborhood of 15 degrees initial timing.
During initial timing, the vacuum advance is left off, but we reconnected it while we let the engine warm up to adjust the carburetor. We'll then unhook it to run it to this little jewel, which is a vacuum gauge that we'll use to dial in our carb.
And the way we're going to do this is we're going to turn this mixture screw and try and get the maximum inches of vacuum, which is the air flowing through the idle circuit, on this gauge. And when we do, that's when we'll stop turning the screw onto this side and transfer over to the other side and get a good balance. The needle might fluctuate on you, especially depending on your cam. Just keep an eye on the needle's highest point. That's one side.
Sounds pretty good.
Well, I'll tell you what, it does. It sounds really good, but that's enough for the laboratory. It's time for some practical application.
Yeah, I'd agree with that. To disagree, there's one or two pieces, small things we should take up before we
nope,
hit the
we'll
street.
do that. Goggles.
Yeah, I do have a pair of shades.
Goggles.
Will the COPO tribute car live up to its legacy? Find out when we come back.
Now I have to say this old Camaro is one of the funnest builds that we've gotten to do. I guess it doesn't get much more iconic than this. There's no denying that this car is a muscle car. It has the look, it has the stance, shoot, it even has the smell. And you know one thing, it's got the power. This aluminum big block ain't no joke. So let's take it for a cruise and see how she does.
Feels like an old muscle car.
Kind of like what they're supposed to feel like. Plenty of pep.
Yep, all the guys my age watching the show will be going, see that? That's it. And when I'm in fourth gear and I don't have another, like, where's that number 5? No number 5. And I'll tell you what, this aluminum 427 feels pretty good.
Yes, sir.
Because I can tell underneath my foot that I'm barely on it. We're cruising in fourth gear. It's got tons of power to go.
Yeah, it's the type of gas pedal. If you're going to sneeze, take your foot off of the gas. Bless you.
Our temperature's running good. It has not moved at all. We got real good steady oil pressure. Fuel, it just says consuming. As fun as it is to build these cars, you know what we always say, it's more fun to get out and drive them. We don't tend to gravitate towards trailer queens. Well, guys, before we call it a day, we got one more thing we want you to see.
So we swung by US 43 Dragway just to see what this old girl had in her. She did pretty well on our first run. We're looking at 854 in the 8th mile at 87.8 miles per hour. You may notice that she's pretty tricky coming out of the hole. Those bi-splies are being pushed to their limit for sure. We brought the air in the tires down from 34 pounds to 28. Mank jumped in for a run.
Lo and behold, my feel for it was a little hot for the first run, and I probably pushed it too hard, missing a shift.
You may remember back at the Shelby meet in Tulsa, I did the same thing in a GT 500.
And this is the face of someone who just missed second gear. Ah!
Now, I don't know if you guys got to see all that, and I sure hope you did, because that right there, that sound, boom, pow, that's what it sounds like when you miss second gear, too. Remember that? Remember what you said? I do.
One more try, and I'm finding that these tires still can't even begin to hang with the power this car is making under the hood. But at least we're having a good time.
Even with the track prep spray on the surface that we're running, it's still having traction issues. That goes to show that when you're on the street with a powerful car, be aware where that skinny pedal's at.
Well, that was nice and straight.
There you go, guys. We took a plain Jane Camaro and kind of did our spin of a COPO Camaro. And I tell you one thing, this thing is definitely one cool ride.
Got her looking good again. It's performing beyond what we even expected. It's been a good day. What do you think?
Well, I hate to even head back to the shop, but I guess we probably ought to.
It usually takes like an hour to get back. I'm thinking 90 minutes maybe.
It is geared kind of like a tractor.
See you guys next time on Power Block.
They really did the COPO name justice. Nice job, guys. Remember, you can check out all of our builds at PowerNationTV.com. I'm Allie Walker, and I'll see you down the road.